The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days, and Marcus Chen was drowning in more than just Seattle's relentless October downpour. His daughter's medical bills sat stacked on the kitchen counter like accusatory fingers. Each envelope a reminder that love wasn't enough to keep the lights on. When the ride request pinged at 11:47 p.m., a simple airport run for $500, he thought it was just another fare. He had no idea the woman sliding into his back seat would confess something that would unravel everything he thought he knew about starting over. Before we dive in, make sure to hit subscribe and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The notification chimed against the silence of Marcus Chen's Honda Civic, its blue glow cutting through the rain-streaked windshield. He'd been parked outside the Starbucks on Pine Street for 27 minutes, watching the digital clock tick toward midnight, while his gas gauge hovered dangerously close to empty. Airport pickup. $500 base fare. Long distance. His thumb hesitated over the accept button. $500 would cover Lily's asthma medication for the next 2 months, maybe even leave enough for the overdue electric bill that had been glowing red in his inbox since Tuesday. He tapped accept. The pickup address led him through the winding streets of Queen Anne, past houses that probably cost more than he'd make in 5 years of driving. The rain drummed against his roof with increasing intensity, as if the sky itself was trying to wash something away. Marcus pulled up to a modern glass house that seemed to float above the hillside, its warm windows casting rectangles of gold onto the wet pavement. He checked his phone. 11:52 p.m. She was probably some tech executive heading to a red-eye flight, too important to remember that real people were waiting in cars that smelled faintly of French fries and desperation. Then, she appeared. She moved through the rain without hurrying, a small suitcase rolling behind her, her dark coat collar turned up against the wind. Even through the distortion of water and glass, Marcus could see something in her posture, not arrogance, but a kind of careful control, like someone who had learned to hold herself together through practice. She slipped into the back seat with practiced efficiency, pulling the door closed with a soft click that somehow seemed louder than the storm outside. "Airport," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But could you just drive for a minute first? I need to think." Marcus adjusted his rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of her face in the passing streetlights. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe early 30s, with the kind of composed beauty that came from expensive skincare and careful living. But her eyes held something raw, something that reminded him of his own reflection these past 6 months. "Bad flight?" he asked, pulling away from the curb. "Bad everything." She leaned back against the headrest, and Marcus caught the faint scent of her perfume, something clean and subtle, like rain on cedar. It was the kind of detail Lily would have noticed first, back when she still talked about everything she observed, before the medical appointments and the sleepless nights had made them both too tired for small talk. They drove in silence through the empty streets, past the closed boutiques and darkened restaurants of Queen Anne. The city looked different at this hour, stripped of its daytime pretenses, raw and honest under the street lamps. "What's your name?" she asked suddenly. "Marcus. Marcus." She repeated it like she was testing how it felt. "I'm Elena." "Nice to meet you, Elena." Another silence stretched between them, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like two people who understood that sometimes words were less important than simply not being alone. "Can I ask you something, Marcus?" "Sure." "Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life?" The question hit him sideways. He'd been asking himself the same thing for months, ever since Sarah's accident, since the lawyers and the life insurance that wasn't enough, and the sudden reality of single parenthood that no one had prepared him for. "Every day," he said. Elena shifted in the back seat, and when he looked in the mirror again, she was watching the city pass by with an expression he couldn't quite read. "I was supposed to get married tomorrow," she said. "Big wedding, 300 people. Flowers that cost more than most people make in a month." "Was? I called it off tonight. About 2 hours ago." Marcus slowed for a red light, the only car waiting in the intersection. The rain had softened to a gentle patter, and in the sudden quiet, he could hear her breathing, measured and deliberate. "I'm sorry," he said. "Are you?" The question caught him off guard. What do you mean?" "I mean, you don't know me. You don't know him. Maybe I made a terrible mistake. Maybe I just destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me." Her voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the tremor underneath, like a fault line shifting. "Did you?" She was quiet for a long moment. "No, I don't think so. I think I've been living in a beautiful cage for so long I forgot what freedom felt like." The light turned green, and Marcus drove through the empty intersection. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd planned together, about how sometimes the things we think we want aren't the things that actually make us happy. "Where were you supposed to go on your honeymoon?" he asked. "Italy. Tuscany. Vineyards and five-star hotels, and guided tours of places I'll never see again." She paused. He had it all planned out. Every meal, every excursion, even scheduled time for romance. Sounds efficient. Elena laughed, and the sound surprised them both. It was real and unguarded, the first authentic thing she'd let slip since getting in the car. He is efficient. He's a lot of things. Successful, handsome, well-connected. He'll make someone very happy someday. But not you. No, not me. They turned onto Aurora, heading north toward the airport. The highway stretched ahead of them, empty and dark, and Marcus found himself driving slower than usual, as if he could make the journey last longer just by wanting it to. "Can I ask you something now?" he said. "Fair trade. Why are you going to the airport if you just called off your wedding? Shouldn't you be home dealing with, I don't know, family, friends? 300 people who are going to show up to a wedding that isn't happening? Is less than #0. 2 is greater than." Elena was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if he'd overstepped. Then she spoke, and her voice was different now, smaller somehow. "Because I can't face them. Not tonight. My mother is probably calling everyone she knows, trying to figure out how to spin this into something that doesn't embarrass the family. My father is calculating how much money we lost on deposits. And Richard," she trailed off. "Richard's your former fiancé? Richard's a good man. He deserves better than someone who realized at the last minute that she was marrying him for all the wrong reasons." She paused. "He deserves better than someone who's been pretending to be someone she's not for the past 3 years." Marcus thought about his own marriage, about how Sarah had loved him exactly as he was rumpled and uncertain, and prone to making pancakes for dinner when he couldn't think of anything else to cook. How she'd laughed at his terrible jokes and fell asleep during every movie they watched together, and made him feel like the person he actually was, not the person he thought he should be. "So, where are you going?" "I bought a ticket to Portland. It was the first flight I could get, and it was far enough away that no one would think to look for me there." "You have friends in Portland?" "I don't have friends anywhere." The honesty of it stopped him cold. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Elena staring out the window at the passing landscape, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. "What do you mean?" "I mean Richard's friends became my friends. His social circle became mine. His interests, his preferred restaurants, his idea of fun." She turned away from the window, and when their eyes met in the mirror, hers were bright with unshed tears. "I can't even remember the last time I did something just because I wanted to do it." They were approaching the airport exit now, the signs glowing green and white against the dark sky. SeaTac loomed ahead of them, all fluorescent lights and concrete efficiency, and Marcus realized he didn't want this conversation to end. "When's your flight?" 6:15 in the morning. He checked the dashboard clock. 12:34 a.m. "That's almost 6 hours from now." "I know. I needed to get out of that house. Away from the dress hanging in the closet, and the guest list on the kitchen table, and all the evidence of the life I almost committed to living." Marcus made a decision that surprised him. Instead of taking the airport exit, he continued straight on Aurora. "What are you doing?" Elena asked. "Buying us some time." For what? I don't know yet. Elena didn't protest. She settled back into the seat, and Marcus caught her reflection in the mirror again, watching him with something that might have been curiosity or might have been relief. They drove north in comfortable silence, past the suburban sprawl of Shoreline and Linwood, past strip malls and apartment complexes, and the ordinary monuments of ordinary lives. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving the world washed and gleaming under the street lamps. "Tell me about your life," Elena said suddenly. "My life?" "The real one. Not the driver version, where you ask polite questions and pretend to care about airport traffic. Your actual life." Marcus wasn't sure how to answer. His actual life felt too raw, too complicated to explain to a stranger in his back seat, even one who had just confessed to calling off her own wedding. "I have a daughter," he said finally. "Lily. She's 8. And her mother died 6 months ago. Car accident." The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Marcus had said them dozens of times now to doctors, to teachers, to Lily's counselor, but they never got easier. "I'm sorry," Elena said, and her voice carried a weight that told him she understood something about loss. "She's the reason I'm out here tonight. Lily. She has asthma, and the medication isn't covered by insurance, and I've been trying to figure out how to pay for everything on a teacher's salary." He paused. "Former teacher's salary. I took a leave of absence to figure things out." "So you're driving." "So I'm driving." Elena was quiet for a moment. "What did you teach?" "High school English. 10th grade, mostly. Sometimes 11th. "Did you love it?" The question surprised him with its directness. "Yeah, I did." "What did you love about it?" Marcus thought about his classroom, about the way certain students' faces would light up when they finally understood a poem or connected with a character in a novel, about the discussions that would run past the bell because everyone was too engaged to stop talking. "I loved watching kids discover that words matter, that stories can change how you see the world." He smiled slightly. "And I loved that every day was different. You never knew which kid was going to have a breakthrough or ask the question that made everyone else start thinking differently." "That sounds wonderful." It was. But wonderful doesn't pay for asthma medication or rent, or the 100 other things Lily needs. Elena leaned forward slightly, and Marcus could see her face more clearly in the mirror now. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure. I make more money in a month than most teachers make in a year, and I hate every minute of what I do." "What do you do?" "Corporate law. Mergers and acquisitions. I help rich companies buy other companies and fire half the people who work there." Her voice was flat, matter of fact. "I'm very good at it. I'm also very miserable doing it." They had reached the northern suburbs now, the houses spreading out into larger lots with more space between them. Marcus turned into a residential neighborhood, driving slowly past darkened windows and sleeping lives. "How did you end up there?" "The same way I ended up engaged to Richard. By making the smart choice instead of the right choice, over and over again, until I couldn't remember which was which anymore." Marcus pulled into an empty parking lot, beside a small neighborhood park. The swings moved gently in the breeze, and somewhere in the distance, he could hear the sound of water, maybe a creek or a small pond. "Why did you stop?" Elena asked. "Because I thought you might want to get out of the car for a minute, clear your head before your flight." Elena looked around at the quiet park, at the swings and the walking paths disappearing into the darkness. "It's beautiful. Lily and I come to places like this sometimes, when the apartment feels too small, or when she's having a bad day with her breathing. We sit on the swings and make up stories about the people who live in the houses around us." "What kind of stories?" "Any kind she wants. Happy ones mostly. Stories where families have enough money, and no one gets sick, and parents don't die in car accidents." His voice caught slightly on the last part. Elena opened the car door and stepped out into the cool night air. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus followed her. The park smelled like wet earth and fallen leaves, autumn settling into Seattle like a familiar friend. Elena walked over to the swings and sat down on one, her expensive shoes sinking slightly into the damp wood chips beneath. Marcus took the swing beside her. "This is the first time I've been on a swing set in probably 15 years, Elena said, pushing herself gently back and forth. "Lily would say you're never too old for swings." "Smart kid." "Yeah, she is. Smarter than her dad, most of the time." They swung in comfortable silence, the chains creaking softly in the night air. Above them, the clouds were beginning to clear, revealing patches of stars that seemed impossibly bright after days of rain. "Marcus?" "Yeah? Thank you. For this. For not just dropping me off at the airport and driving away." He turned to look at her, and in the faint light from a distant street lamp, he could see that she was crying not the desperate tears of earlier, but something quieter, more like relief. "You don't have to thank me." "Yes, I do. Because 6 hours ago, I thought I knew exactly what my life was going to look like, and now," she gestured around them, at the swings and the stars and the simple fact of being here together. "Now I have no idea what happens next, and for the first time in years, that doesn't terrify me." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a loosening he hadn't expected. "Can I tell you something? Fair trade. I've been driving for 3 months now, and you're the first person who's made me remember that there are still good conversations to be had with strangers." Elena smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "We're not strangers anymore, though, are we?" "No," Marcus said, and realized it was true. "I guess we're not." They sat there, swinging gently as the night deepened around them. Two people who had stumbled into each other's lives at exactly the right moment, even if neither of them understood what that moment might mean yet. Elena's phone buzzed against the silence, its glow harsh in the darkness of the park. She glanced at the screen and immediately looked away. "Richard?" Marcus asked. "My mother. 17 missed calls." Elena silenced the phone and slipped it back into her coat pocket. "I should probably face reality soon." "What would you tell Lily if she were afraid to face something?" The question surprised Elena. She stopped swinging and turned to look at him more fully. "What do you mean?" "I mean, sometimes kids ask the questions adults need to hear. If my 8-year-old came to me scared about something she had to do, what would I tell her?" Elena considered this, her feet dragging slightly in the wood chips. "You'd probably tell her that brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing, even when you are scared." "Yeah, I would. But this isn't the same thing, isn't it?" Elena stood up from the swing, pacing a few steps toward the edge of the playground. Marcus could see her silhouette against the faint light from the street, her posture tense, with the weight of decisions still unmade. "I left a good man standing in a hotel room tonight, Marcus. A man who loves me, who's probably spent the last 2 hours trying to figure out what he did wrong. I've hurt my family, embarrassed them in front of their friends. I've wasted thousands of dollars and ruined dozens of people's plans." Her voice was rising slightly, the composure she'd maintained in the car beginning to crack. "That's not brave. That's selfish." Marcus stood up too, but he didn't move toward her. "What would have been brave? Going through with it. Honoring my commitments. Being the person everyone expected me to be. Even if it wasn't the person you actually are?" Elena turned around to face him, and in the dim light, he could see tears on her cheeks. "How do I even know who I actually am anymore? It's been so long since I made a choice based on what I wanted, instead of what made sense." Marcus thought about Sarah, about the afternoon she'd told him she was pregnant with Lily. They'd been dating for less than a year, both of them still figuring out what they wanted from life, and the smart thing would have been to be terrified. Instead, Sarah had looked at him with eyes bright with possibility and said, "I know this changes everything, but what if it changes everything in the best way?" "When's the last time you did something just because it made you happy?" he asked. Elena wrapped her arms around herself, a gesture that made her look younger somehow. "I used to paint. In college, I was actually pretty good at it. Not good enough to make a living, but good enough that my professors thought I should keep going. What happened?" What happened? Law school happened. A practical degree, a practical career, practical choices that led to a practical life. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. My parents were so proud. Their daughter, the successful lawyer. Their daughter who made smart decisions. Do you still paint? I haven't touched a brush in 8 years. Marcus walked over to where she stood, close enough now that he could see the way the streetlight caught in her dark hair. What would you paint if you started again? I don't know. I used to paint people. Faces, expressions. I was fascinated by the way emotion shows up in the smallest details, the way someone's eyes change when they're really listening. Or how their mouth shifts when they're trying not to cry. Like you're doing right now? Elena's hand went automatically to her face, as if she could hide what he'd already seen. Am I that obvious? Only to someone who's spent the last 6 months learning to read his daughter's face for signs she's having trouble breathing. The honesty of it stopped Elena cold. She looked at Marcus, really looked at him for the first time since getting in his car. He wasn't handsome in the polished way Richard was, but there was something solid about him, something real. His hair was slightly messy from the rain, and his jacket had seen better years, but his eyes were kind and present, in a way she'd almost forgotten existed. I'm sorry, she said. About your wife. About having to learn to read fear in your daughter's face. Her name was Sarah. Tell me about her. Marcus leaned against the swing set, his hands wrapped around the metal chain. She was a nurse. Pediatric ICU. She used to come home and tell me stories about the kids she worked with, never names or details, just moments. A 5-year-old who insisted on wearing a superhero cape during his chemotherapy treatments. A baby who would only stop crying when someone sang Beatles songs. She sounds wonderful. She was. She was also stubborn and terrible at remembering to put gas in her car, and she cried during every movie, even the comedies. Marcus smiled slightly. She made me feel like the best version of myself, just by believing I was already that person. Elena felt something twist in her chest, not jealousy, exactly, but a kind of longing for something she'd never experienced. Richard never made me feel that way. How did he make you feel? Safe. Secure. Like I was making the right choice for once. She paused. But never like myself. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the weight of their confessions settling between them. Elena's phone buzzed again, but this time she ignored it completely. Can I ask you something else? Marcus said. I think we're past asking permission. Why a flight to Portland? Of all the places you could go, why there? Elena considered the question. Because it was the first city that came up that I'd never been to with Richard. He's been everywhere, New York for business, LA for conferences, Europe for pleasure trips. But Portland was mine. What will you do there? I have no idea. Find a hotel, I guess. Figure out what comes next. She looked at him curiously. What would you do? If you could go anywhere, start over completely? Marcus thought about it. I can't. I have Lily. But if you could, hypothetically, I'd probably find a small town somewhere, maybe in Oregon actually. Somewhere I could teach again without the pressure of a big city. Somewhere with good air for Lily's lungs and a main street with actual bookstores and coffee shops run by people who know your name. That sounds perfect. It's just a fantasy. Real life doesn't work that way. Elena studied his face in the dim light. What if it could? What do you mean? I mean, what if it's not as impossible as you think? Before Marcus could answer, they heard the sound of a car engine in the distance. Headlights swept across the park as a police cruiser turned slowly into the parking lot. Shit, Marcus muttered. The cruiser pulled up beside Marcus's Honda, and after a moment, an officer got out. He was older, probably nearing retirement, with the kind of measured movements that came from years of late-night encounters with citizens in various states of crisis. Everything okay here? He called out. Marcus and Elena walked over to meet him. Yes, sir. Just taking a break from driving. The officer looked between them, Marcus, in his worn jacket, and Elena, in her expensive coat. An unlikely pair in an empty park at 1 in the morning. You folks live around here? I'm a rideshare driver, Marcus explained. This is my passenger. We stopped so she could get some air before her flight. The officer nodded, his expression neutral but watchful. Mind if I see some ID? They both handed over their licenses. The officer examined them with the thoroughness of someone who'd seen enough middle-of-the-night situations to know that things weren't always what they appeared to be. Miss Rodriguez, your address shows Queen Anne. That's quite a ways from here. I know. It's been a difficult night. The officer's expression softened slightly. And Mr. Chen, you're registered as a rideshare driver? Yes, sir. He handed their licenses back. Look, I don't know what kind of difficult night you're having, miss, but sitting in an empty park at this hour isn't the safest choice. There are better places to work things out. You're right, Elena said. We were just leaving. The officer nodded. Drive safe, and maybe consider heading home instead of the airport if you don't really need to be on that flight. After he drove away, Marcus and Elena stood beside his car in the sudden quiet. How did he know about the airport? Elena asked. Lucky guess. Or maybe he's seen enough people running away to recognize the signs. Elena looked back toward the swings, then at Marcus. He's right, isn't he? About there being better places to work things out? Probably. I don't want to go to Portland anymore. The admission hung between them, and Marcus realized he'd been hoping she'd say exactly that. What do you want to do? Elena looked at her phone. 2:17 a.m. In less than 4 hours, she was supposed to be on a plane to a city where she knew no one, with no plan beyond running away from a life that felt like it belonged to someone else. I want to see where you live, she said. I want to meet your daughter. I want to understand what a real life looks like. Marcus felt his heart do something complicated in his chest. Elena, I know it's crazy. I know I'm probably having some kind of breakdown and asking you to be my emotional support stranger. But I also know that in the last 3 hours, I've felt more like myself than I have in years. It's not crazy, Marcus said quietly. No, but it's complicated. Because of Lily? Because of everything. Because you just called off your wedding, and I'm still figuring out how to be a single parent, and because this, he gestured between them, whatever this is, it's happening at the worst possible time for both of us. Elena stepped closer to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume again, could see the way her breath formed small clouds in the cool air. What if there's no such thing as the right time? She said. What if there's just the time we have, and what we choose to do with it? Marcus looked at her, standing there in her expensive coat, with her makeup slightly smudged, and her perfectly planned life in ruins. And he thought about Sarah's voice, telling him that sometimes the best things happen when you stop trying to control everything. Lily wakes up early, he said. How early? 6:30 usually. Sometimes earlier if she's having trouble breathing. I'd like to meet her, if that's okay. Marcus pulled out his phone and canceled her airport ride request. Come on. Let's go home. They drove back through the sleeping city, in a different kind of silence now, not the careful distance of strangers, but the charged quiet of two people who had crossed some invisible line and were still figuring out what that meant. Elena watched Seattle pass by outside her window, the familiar streets looking foreign in the pre-dawn darkness. She thought about Richard, probably lying awake in their hotel room, trying to understand how 3 years of careful planning had unraveled in a single evening. She thought about her parents, who would spend the morning making phone calls and handling the logistics of a canceled wedding with the efficient grace they brought to every crisis. But mostly she thought about Marcus, about the way he'd listened without trying to fix anything, the way he'd offered her a different kind of space than she'd ever known existed. Are you sure about this? She asked, as they turned into his neighborhood. No, Marcus said. Are you? No. They pulled into the parking lot of a modest apartment complex, the kind of place where people made do and got by, and sometimes found unexpected moments of grace. Marcus's apartment was on the 2nd floor, up a flight of external stairs that creaked slightly under their feet. He paused with his key in the lock. Elena. Yeah? Whatever happens next after tonight. I mean, I want you to know that you saved me tonight too. I've been so focused on just surviving the last 6 months that I forgot there were still conversations worth having, people worth knowing. Elena felt tears prick her eyes again. Marcus. Yeah? Open the door. He did, and she followed him into a home that smelled like coffee and laundry detergent, and the particular warmth of a place where love lived, even when money was tight and the future was uncertain. The living room was small but carefully arranged, with a couch that had seen better years and a coffee table covered with Lily's artwork. Elena moved toward the drawings, studying them in the soft light from a single lamp Marcus had turned on. She's talented, Elena whispered. She gets it from her mom. Elena picked up one of the drawings, a house with windows that looked like eyes and a door that curved upward like a smile. At the bottom, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, home is where people love you, even when you're scared. Oh, Elena breathed. That one's from last month. Her counselor had her draw pictures about feelings. Elena set the drawing down carefully, as if it were made of something more fragile than paper. She's been in counseling? Since the accident. To help her process everything. Marcus moved quietly around the small space, straightening cushions that didn't need straightening. She's been having nightmares. About losing me too. The weight of it hit Elena suddenly, not just Marcus's grief, but Lily's terror. The way loss had reshaped their entire world. She thought about her own problems, which suddenly seemed small and manageable in comparison. I should go, she said. This was selfish. You don't need a stranger in your home when you're dealing with Elena. Marcus's voice stopped her. Don't. Don't what? Don't decide for me what I need. Don't assume that because my life is complicated, there's no room in it for something unexpected. They stood looking at each other across his small living room, surrounded by the evidence of his real life. Lily's drawings and school notices on the refrigerator, and medical bills stacked on the kitchen counter. It was the opposite of everything Elena's life had been, and yet it felt more authentic than anywhere she'd ever stood. Dad? The small voice came from the hallway, and they both turned to see Lily standing in the doorway to her bedroom. She was wearing pajamas covered with cartoon planets, her dark hair tangled from sleep, and she was holding an inhaler in one small hand. Hey baby, Marcus said, moving quickly to her side. Are you okay? Do you need your nebulizer? Lily shook her head, but Elena could hear the slight wheeze in her breathing. I heard voices. Who's the lady? Elena felt her heart do something she didn't expect. The little girl looking up at her had Marcus's kind eyes, and something else, a gravity that came from understanding too young that the world could take away the people you loved without warning. This is Elena, Marcus said. She's a friend. Lily studied Elena with the frank assessment children brought to new adults in their space. Are you staying for breakfast? Elena looked at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. If that's okay with you, Elena said. Lily considered this seriously. Can you make pancakes? Dad burns them. Hey, Marcus protested mildly. You do, Dad. They're always black on the outside and gooey on the inside. Elena found herself smiling. I think I can manage pancakes that aren't burnt. Good, Lily said, with the finality of someone who'd made an important decision. I'm going back to bed now, but don't leave before pancakes, okay? Okay, Elena promised. After Lily disappeared back into her room, Marcus and Elena stood in the sudden quiet of the living room. She likes you, Marcus said. How can you tell? She asked you to stay for breakfast. Lily doesn't invite people to breakfast. Elena sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. What are we doing, Marcus? I don't know, he said, sitting beside her. But I know that for the first time in 6 months, I'm not thinking about medical bills, or whether I can afford groceries, or how I'm going to explain to Lily why her dad can't fix everything. What are you thinking about? Marcus looked at her, really looked at her, taking in her smudged makeup and expensive coat, and the way she'd spoken to his daughter, like she actually mattered. "I'm thinking about pancakes," he said. "And about the fact that you're the first person since Sarah died who's made me remember that there's still room in this world for unexpected kindness." Elena felt something settle in her chest, something that had been restless and searching for years. "I'm falling for you," she said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, simple and devastating. Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached over and took her hand, his fingers warm and slightly rough from months of gripping a steering wheel. "Elena, I know it's insane. I know we just met. I know my entire life is falling apart, and yours is held together with hope and determination. But I had to say it, because sitting here in your living room, surrounded by your daughter's artwork, I finally understand what I've been missing all these years." "What's that?" "The feeling that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Marcus didn't let go of her hand. They sat in the dim light of his living room, the weight of Elena's confession settling around them like dust after an earthquake. Outside, the first hints of dawn were beginning to touch the edges of the sky, and somewhere in the building, a neighbor's alarm clock was going off. "Elena," Marcus said finally, "you don't have to say anything back. I just needed you to know." "I do have to say something." He turned toward her, still holding her hand. "Because what you just said, it scares the hell out of me." "I know." "No, I don't think you do." Marcus's voice was quiet but intense. 6 months ago, I thought I had my whole life figured out. I was married to an amazing woman. We had a beautiful daughter. I was teaching kids who actually wanted to learn. And then, one phone call changed everything. Elena squeezed his hand, saying nothing. The call came at 2:47 inches the afternoon. I remember because I was grading essays, and I kept checking the clock because I wanted to finish before Lily got home from school. Marcus's eyes were fixed on something Elena couldn't see. Sarah was driving home from her shift at the hospital. Some kid ran a red light, probably texting. She died before the paramedics got there. "Marcus, I'm telling you this because for 6 months, I've been terrified of wanting anything. Terrified that the moment I let myself hope for something, it'll get taken away too." He looked at her directly now. "And then you got in my car tonight, and for the first time since the accident, I forgot to be afraid." Elena felt her breath catch. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know yet." They sat in silence for a moment, processing the enormity of what they'd admitted to each other. Then Elena spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never felt this way about anyone. Not Richard, not the guy before him, not anyone. I used to think that meant something was wrong with me, that I was incapable of the kind of love other people seem to find so easily. And now? Now I think maybe I was just waiting for the right person to be falling for." Marcus stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that looked out over the parking lot. Elena could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. "This is crazy," he said. "I know. You called off your wedding 12 hours ago. I'm a single father with more debt than assets, and a daughter who needs more than I can give her. We don't even know each other. But we do know each other. Maybe not the details, your favorite color, or how you take your coffee, or what you wanted to be when you grew up. But I know that you're the kind of person who stops at a park at 1 a.m. because a stranger in your back seat needs to think. I know you love your daughter more than your own life. I know you became a teacher because you believe words can change the world." Marcus turned around to face her. "What else do you know? I know you're afraid that letting yourself feel something for me means betraying Sarah's memory. I know you're scared that if you stop focusing on survival, everything will fall apart. And I know that despite all of that, you're considering it anyway, because something about this feels right in a way that nothing has for a long time." The accuracy of it hit Marcus like a physical blow. "How do you—" "Because I'm scared of the same things. Different details, same fear." Elena stood up and moved toward him. "I'm terrified that if I let myself want you, I'll just be making another impulsive decision that'll hurt people I care about. Except this time, One of those people is an 8-year-old girl who's already lost enough. Lily can't lose anyone else, Marcus said fiercely. I won't let that happen. Then don't. What do you mean? Elena stepped closer to him, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. I mean, what if this isn't about losing anything? What if it's about gaining something none of us expected? Before Marcus could respond, they heard a sound from Lily's room, the familiar wheeze of labored breathing that every parent of an asthmatic child learned to recognize in their sleep. Marcus was moving before he'd consciously decided to, crossing the living room in 3 quick steps. Elena followed, stopping in the doorway of Lily's bedroom as Marcus knelt beside the small bed. Hey baby, he said softly. How's your breathing? Lily sat up, her chest rising and falling with visible effort. It's okay. Just a little tight. But Elena could see it wasn't okay. Even in the dim light from the hallway, she could see the way Lily's shoulders lifted with each breath, the slight blue tinge around her lips that Marcus was already reaching for his phone to address. Nebulizer time, Marcus said, his voice calm but quick. Elena watched as he moved with practiced efficiency, setting up a small machine that hummed to life beside Lily's bed. He helped his daughter with the breathing treatment, with the kind of gentle competence that spoke to months of middle-of-the-night medical crises. Is she okay? Elena whispered. She will be. This happens sometimes when the weather changes, or when she's stressed, or sometimes just because. Marcus's attention was completely focused on Lily, monitoring her breathing, ready to call 911 if the nebulizer didn't work. Elena felt something shift inside her as she watched them together, Marcus's complete presence. Lily's brave acceptance of something that would terrify most adults. This was real life, she realized. Not the carefully curated existence she'd been living, but the raw, messy, beautiful reality of 2 people taking care of each other. After 10 minutes, Lily's breathing began to ease. The machine's humming stopped, and Marcus helped her lie back down. Better? He asked. Lily nodded. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart? Is Elena really staying for pancakes? Marcus looked back at Elena, who had remained quietly in the doorway throughout the episode. In her expensive coat and designer shoes, she looked out of place in the small bedroom with its medical equipment and nightlight shaped like a moon. But she'd stayed, and something about her presence felt steadying, rather than intrusive. Do you want her to stay? Marcus asked. Lily considered this with 8-year-old seriousness. Is she nice? Yeah, she's nice. Is she going to make you sad like the lady at the bank who was mean about the bills? Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd tried so hard to shield Lily from their financial stress, but children noticed everything. No, baby. Elena's not going to make me sad. Good. Lily's eyes were starting to flutter closed again. I like her. She has a kind face. After Lily fell back asleep, Marcus and Elena returned to the living room. The sky outside was lighter now, the gray pre-dawn that came before sunrise. I should probably go, Elena said quietly. Should you? Your daughter just had an asthma attack. You need to focus on her, not on whatever this is between us. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. Elena, that's my life. Lily's asthma, the medical bills, the constant worry that I'm not enough to take care of her properly. If you're looking for something simple and uncomplicated, you should know that's not what I can offer. Elena sat beside him. What if I don't want simple and uncomplicated? What do you want? I want to be part of something real. I want to matter to people who matter to me. I want to stop living like I'm waiting for my actual life to start. Marcus looked at her still beautiful despite her smudged makeup and wrinkled coat, but more than that, present in a way that felt genuine and unguarded. Can I tell you something? He said. Always. Watching you tonight, the way you didn't flinch when Lily had trouble breathing, the way you stayed quiet, and let me take care of her without trying to help or ask questions. It reminded me that there are still people in the world who understand that love sometimes looks like stepping back instead of stepping in. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Sarah taught you that? Yeah, she did. Tell me about her. Really tell me. Not just the highlights. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, and Elena wondered if she'd pushed too far. Then he began to speak, his voice soft in the pre-dawn quiet. Sarah snorted when she laughed really hard. She was terrible at parallel parking but refused to admit it. She cried during insurance commercials if they had dogs in them. She used to leave me notes in my lunch, not romantic ones, just random observations about the world that she thought I'd find interesting. Elena smiled. She sounds wonderful. She was, but she was also human. She left dishes in the sink for days, and never remembered to replace the toilet paper, and got irrationally angry at people who walked slowly in grocery stores. Marcus paused. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to think you're competing with some perfect memory. Sarah was amazing, but she wasn't perfect. And what I felt for her, it was built over years of ordinary moments and shared decisions, and learning how to be ourselves together. And what you're feeling for me? Marcus turned to look at her directly. What I'm feeling for you is terrifying, and immediate, and completely unexpected. It's not better or worse than what I had with Sarah. It's just different. Elena felt something settle in her chest, a kind of relief she hadn't known she needed. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. What happens now? I mean, practically speaking. I have a job I hate in a city where I don't really belong anymore. You have a life here. A daughter who needs stability. Even if we both want this, how does it actually work? Marcus considered the question. Outside, the sky was getting lighter, and he could hear the distant sounds of a city beginning to wake up. I don't know, he said finally. But I know that 6 hours ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I was going to drive until I'd saved enough money to pay off Lily's medical bills, then maybe try to get my teaching job back. Small goals. Manageable steps. And now? Now, I'm wondering if maybe there's room for bigger dreams than I thought. Elena's phone buzzed on the coffee table, and they both looked at it. 23 missed calls from Richard, 12 from her mother, 5 from her father, and a string of text messages she couldn't bring herself to read. I have to deal with that eventually, she said. But not right now. No. Not right now. Marcus stood up and moved to the kitchen, filling the coffee maker with movements that spoke to early mornings and practiced routine. Tell me about your painting, he said. What about it? You said you used to paint faces, expressions. What did you see in people's faces that made you want to capture it? Elena curled up in the corner of the couch, pulling a throw blanket around her shoulders. It smelled like fabric softener, and something that was uniquely Marcus's home. I was fascinated by the moments when people forgot to control their expressions. When they were listening to music they loved, or watching their children play, or thinking about something that made them happy when they thought no one was looking. She paused. I wanted to paint those moments when people were most themselves. When did you stop? Law school was demanding, and Richard thought it was a waste of time. He said I was talented, but not talented enough to make a career out of it. So what was the point of pursuing something that would only ever be a hobby? Marcus poured coffee into 2 mugs and brought them over to the couch. What do you think? I think he was probably right. I was good, but there are a lot of good artists who never make it. That's not what I asked. Elena looked at him over her coffee mug. What do you mean? I mean, do you think it was a waste of time? Even if you never sold a painting, even if no one ever saw your work, except you, was the act of creating it worthless? Elena considered this. No. When I was painting, I felt like I was doing exactly what I was supposed to be doing. Like I was using some part of myself that nothing else touched. That doesn't sound worthless to me. But it's not practical. Says who? Says everyone. Says the world. Says people who understand how money works, and careers are built, and lives are actually lived. Marcus set down his coffee mug and turned to face her fully. Elena, can I tell you what I see when I look at you? What? I see someone who's spent years making choices based on what other people think is important, instead of what actually matters to her. I see someone who's brilliant and kind and brave enough to call off a wedding when she realized it was wrong, even though it would have been easier to go through with it. Elena felt her breath catch. And I see someone who's been so busy living up to other people's expectations that she's forgotten her own dreams are worth pursuing. You don't know me well enough to see all that, don't I? They looked at each other across the small space of his couch, and Elena realized that everything he'd said was true. More than that, he'd seen it in the course of a single conversation, while people who'd known her for years, Richard, her parents, her colleagues, had never looked closely enough to notice. "What if you're wrong?" she whispered. "What if I try to paint again, and I'm terrible at it now? What if I quit my job and can't find anything else? What if I upend my entire life, and it turns out I was better off before? What if you don't, and spend the rest of your life wondering who you might have been?" Before Elena could answer, they heard Lily's bedroom door open, and small footsteps padding toward the kitchen. "Dad?" Lily's voice was clearer now, her breathing back to normal. "Can we have pancakes now? I'm hungry." Marcus and Elena exchanged a look, part conspiracy, part promise, part leap of faith. "Coming, sweetheart," Marcus called. Then, to Elena, "Ready for pancakes?" Elena stood up, smoothing her wrinkled coat, and realized she was about to cook breakfast for a man she'd met 6 hours ago, and his daughter who'd just invited her to stay. It was impractical and impulsive, and completely outside anything she'd ever imagined herself doing. It felt exactly right. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." Lily Chen was a serious pancake critic. She sat at the small kitchen table, her chin resting on her hands, watching Elena navigate the unfamiliar territory of Marcus's kitchen with the focused attention of a food show judge. Elena had borrowed one of Marcus's old t-shirts over her blouse, and her expensive shoes sat by the door next to Lily's light-up sneakers. "The trick is not to flip them too early," Elena said, testing the edge of a pancake with the spatula. "You have to wait until the bubbles on top start to pop, and stay open." "Dad always flips them too early," Lily observed. "Hey," Marcus protested from where he stood, leaning against the counter, coffee mug in hand. "My pancakes have character. They have burnt spots," Lily corrected seriously. "That's not the same thing." Elena laughed, a sound that seemed to surprise her as much as it delighted Marcus. In the morning light, streaming through the kitchen window, she looked different, younger, somehow more relaxed. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail secured with a rubber band she'd found in a drawer, and there was flour on her cheek. "First batch is ready," Elena announced, sliding 3 perfectly golden pancakes onto a plate. Lily accepted the plate with the gravity of someone receiving a diplomatic treaty. She cut a careful bite, chewed thoughtfully, and then rendered her verdict. "These are really good." "Just really good?" Elena asked, raising an eyebrow. Lily considered this. "Really, really good. Maybe the best pancakes I ever had that weren't from IHOP." "High praise," Marcus said, accepting his own plate. The pancakes were perfect, golden and fluffy, with crisp edges that spoke to technique rather than luck. "Where did you learn to cook?" Lily asked. "My grandmother taught me. She used to make pancakes every Sunday after church." Elena sat down at the table with her own plate. She said the secret was treating the batter gently, like you were handling something precious. "Was your grandmother nice?" "Very nice. She lived in a little house with a garden full of vegetables and flowers all mixed together. She said there was no reason why beautiful things and useful things couldn't grow side by side." Marcus watched the easy way. Elena talked to Lily, not the careful, overly bright tone adults often used with children, but the respectful directness of someone who understood that 8-year-olds were complete people with their own thoughts and opinions. "Do you have kids?" Lily asked. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "No, I don't." "Do you want kids?" "Lily," Marcus warned gently. "It's okay," Elena said. She looked at Lily seriously. I used to think I didn't want children, but I think maybe I just never met the right family to be part of." Lily nodded, as if this made perfect sense. Sometimes, things you don't think you want turn out to be really good. Like vegetables, or going to bed early, or having to take breathing treatments. "That's very wise," Elena said. "I know. Dad says I'm wise beyond my years." "That means smart for a kid." "I know what it means," Elena said solemnly. "And your dad is right." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the morning sun warming the small kitchen. Elena found herself studying the space. The mismatched dishes that spoke to practical choices rather than aesthetic ones. The refrigerator, covered with Lily's artwork and medical appointment reminders. The window herb garden that was thriving despite being planted in old yogurt containers. It was the opposite of her sleek Queen Anne kitchen, with its granite counters and high-end appliances that she rarely used. This kitchen was lived in, loved, imperfect and real, in a way that made her chest ache. "Elena?" Lily said suddenly. "Yeah? Are you going to be Dad's girlfriend now?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Elena felt Marcus go very still beside her, his coffee mug frozen halfway to his lips. "Lily?" Marcus said quietly. "What? I'm just asking. She stayed the night, and made us pancakes, and she's wearing your shirt. That's what girlfriends do in movies." Elena looked at Marcus, who was looking at his daughter with an expression caught between mortification and pride. "It's complicated, sweetheart," Elena said carefully. "Your dad and I just met last night." "So?" "So usually people get to know each other better before they become boyfriend and girlfriend." Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all adult logic that didn't quite make sense to her. "But you like him, right?" "Yes, I like him. And he likes you. I can tell because he keeps looking at you like he's surprised you're here, but happy surprised, not scared surprised." Marcus nearly choked on his coffee. "Lily, it's true. You do that thing with your eyebrows when you look at her. The same thing you used to do when you looked at Mom in the pictures." The comparison stopped all conversation cold. Elena felt something clench in her stomach. Not jealousy, but a sudden awareness of the complexity of what she was walking into. Marcus set down his coffee mug carefully. "Lily, can we talk about this later? Elena and I need to figure some things out first." "Okay. But can I ask one more thing?" "What?" Lily looked directly at Elena. "If you do become Dad's girlfriend, are you going to leave like some people do when things get hard?" The question was asked with 8-year-old directness, but Elena could hear the weight behind it. The fear of a child who had already lost one parent and lived with the constant awareness that people you loved could disappear without warning. Elena put down her fork and gave Lily her full attention. "Can I tell you something?" Lily nodded. "I don't know what's going to happen with your dad and me. We need time to figure that out. But I can promise you this. I won't make any promises I can't keep, and I won't pretend to be something I'm not. Just to make you feel better." "That's good. Adults lie to kids a lot because they think it's nicer. But it's not." "No, it's not." Lily finished her last bite of pancake and looked between Elena and Marcus. "I think you should try being boyfriend and girlfriend. Dad's been really sad since Mom died, and you made him laugh last night. I heard you from my room." "You were eavesdropping?" Marcus asked. "I was listening to make sure you were okay. Sometimes you talk to yourself when you think I'm asleep, and you sound worried." Lily's voice got quieter. "I don't like when you sound worried." Marcus felt something crack open in his chest. He'd tried so hard to shield Lily from his stress, his grief, his fears about their future. But children, he knew, absorbed everything. "Come here, baby," he said. Lily climbed into his lap, and he held her close, breathing in the smell of her shampoo and the lingering wheeze in her chest that reminded him every day how fragile everything was. "I'm sorry you've been worrying about me," he said. "That's not your job." "I know, but I do it anyway because I love you. I love you too. More than anything." Elena watched them together and felt something shift inside her, not the desperate need to belong that had driven so many of her decisions, but something quieter and more certain. She wanted to protect this, she realized. This small family that had been broken and was slowly healing itself. She wanted to be part of it, yes, but more than that, she wanted to help it flourish. Her phone buzzed on the counter, breaking the moment. All three of them looked at it. "You should probably answer that eventually," Marcus said gently. Elena glanced at the screen. Richard's name. Again. "Yeah, I should. Can I ask what you're going to tell him?" Elena thought about it. 12 hours ago, she would have had a prepared speech about incompatibility and timing and mutual respect. Now, sitting in Marcus's kitchen wearing his t-shirt, while his daughter asked her direct questions about love and commitment, she realized her answer was much simpler. "The truth," she said, "that I'm not the person he fell in love with, and I need to figure out who I actually am." "And your parents?" "I'll figure it out. They'll be disappointed, but they'll recover. The guests will gossip for a few weeks, and then find something else to talk about. Richard will eventually realize he's better off without someone who was never fully present in their relationship." Lily wiggled out of Marcus's lap and began clearing the breakfast dishes with the practiced efficiency of a child who'd grown up helping with household tasks. "What about your job?" Marcus asked. "I have savings, enough to take some time, figure out what comes next." Elena paused. "Actually, can I ask you something?" "Anything." "What would it take for you to start teaching again?" "Elena, I'm serious. You said the only reason you're driving is to pay for Lily's medical expenses, right? What if those expenses weren't an issue?" Marcus felt something cold settle in his stomach. "If you're offering to..." "I'm not offering charity. I'm asking a hypothetical question. If money weren't the deciding factor, what would you want to do?" Marcus looked around his small kitchen, at Lily carefully rinsing dishes in the sink, at Elena, sitting at his table like she belonged there. "I'd want to teach," he admitted. "There's a position open at Roosevelt High School. Good school, kids who want to learn. The principal called last week to see if I was interested." "Why didn't you take it?" "Because teaching doesn't pay enough to cover everything. The insurance isn't good enough for Lily's condition. I can't risk it." Elena was quiet for a moment, turning something over in her mind. What if there was a way to make it work? "Elena, I can't let you. What if I told you I've been thinking about leaving Seattle anyway? That I've been wondering what it would be like to live somewhere smaller, quieter. Somewhere I could start over." Marcus felt his heart do something complicated. "Like where?" "Like wherever you and Lily want to be." The suggestion hung in the air between them. Enormous and impossible. And suddenly the only thing Marcus could imagine wanting. "You don't know what you're saying," he said quietly. "Don't I? You're talking about giving up your career, your life, everything you've built, for people you've known for 8 hours." Elena stood up from the table and moved to where he sat, reaching out to take his hands. "Marcus, what I've built isn't a life. It's an impressive resume. What I have here, right now, in your kitchen at 7:30 in the morning, this is the first time I've felt alive in years." "Dad?" Lily's voice interrupted them. She was standing by the sink, dish towel in her hands, looking between them with an expression that was part hope, part worry. "What is it, sweetheart? If Elena stays, does that mean we could get a bigger apartment? Maybe one with a dishwasher?" Despite everything, Marcus found himself laughing. "Is that your main concern about this situation?" "No, my main concern is that you'll be happy again. But a dishwasher would be nice too." Elena squeezed Marcus's hands. "Can we try? Just try? Not forever. Not with promises about the future we can't keep. Just try to see if this thing between us is real. And if it is, if we can build something good together?" Marcus looked at his daughter, who was watching them with the serious attention of someone whose vote mattered in this decision. Then he looked at Elena, beautiful, brave Elena, who had walked away from a safe life to find something true. "What about your painting?" he asked. "What about it? If you're going to start over, really start over, you should paint again." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't even know if I still can. Only one way to find out." Lily finished with the dishes and came to stand beside them. "Are you going to try being a family?" Elena looked down at this small, serious girl who had already survived more loss than most adults, and felt something certainties she'd built her life around crumble and reform into something entirely new. "Do you want us to try?" Elena asked. Lily considered this with all the gravity of a Supreme Court justice. "Yes. But I have conditions." "Conditions?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "First, no more burnt pancakes. Elena cooks breakfast from now on." "Deal," Elena said solemnly. "Second, if you're going to kiss and be gross, try to do it when I'm not looking." "We'll do our best," Marcus said, fighting back a smile. "Third, you have to promise that even if things get hard or complicated or scary, you'll talk about it instead of just giving up." The seriousness of the request caught them both off guard. This was the wisdom of a child who had learned too young that adults sometimes made decisions that changed everything without warning. "That's a very good condition," Elena said. "I promise." "Me too," Marcus added. Lily nodded, satisfied. "Okay then. I think we should try being a family." And sitting there in the morning light of Marcus's kitchen, surrounded by the debris of breakfast and the possibility of an entirely different future, Elena realized that for the first time in her adult life, she had absolutely no idea what came next. It was the most beautiful feeling in the world. 3 months later, Elena stood in the empty classroom at Roosevelt High School, watching Marcus arrange desks into collaborative clusters instead of rigid rows. Afternoon light streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like possibilities in the air. "The kids are going to love this setup," she said, setting down a box of books she'd been carrying from his car. Marcus looked up from adjusting a desk and smiled the easy, unguarded smile that still caught her off guard with its warmth. "Think so?" "I know so. It says we're going to have conversations here, not sit quietly and absorb information." Elena had been right about many things, it turned out. About Richard, who had handled their conversation with more grace than she'd expected, acknowledging that he'd sensed her distance for months, but had hoped marriage would fix what was actually unfixable. About her parents, who had been disappointed but not devastated, and who were slowly warming to the idea that their daughter might be happier as a teacher's partner than as a corporate lawyer's wife. She'd been wrong about some things too. She'd underestimated how difficult it would be to walk away from a career she'd spent years building, even one that made her miserable. She'd underestimated the complexity of joining a family that was still healing from profound loss. And she'd completely failed to anticipate how hard it would be to pick up a paintbrush again after 8 years of telling herself she wasn't good enough. But here she was, 3 months later, living in a rented house with a garden and a studio space converted from the garage, watching the man she loved prepare to return to work he was passionate about. "Elena?" Marcus said. You're thinking too loud again," she laughed. "Sorry. I was just taking it all in." Marcus walked over to where she stood and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "Nervous?" "Terrified," she admitted. "What if we're making a mistake? What if you hate teaching after being away from it? What if I can't remember how to paint? What if Lily decides she doesn't actually like having me around all the time? What if it all works out better than we imagined?" Elena leaned back against his chest, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. "When did you become the optimistic one in this relationship?" "About the time you helped me remember that some risks are worth taking." Through the classroom windows, they could see the school parking lot filling with cars as other teachers arrived for the pre-semester faculty meeting. In a few hours, Marcus would be surrounded by colleagues he hadn't seen since Sarah's funeral, answering questions about his leave of absence and his plans for the new year. "Are you ready for all the questions?" Elena asked. "About you?" About everything. Your time away, our situation, how Lily's doing. Marcus was quiet for a moment. I used to dread those conversations. The careful way people would ask about Lily and me, like they were afraid the wrong words might break us completely. And now? Now I have good news to share. Lily's breathing has been better since we moved to the house, cleaner air, bigger yard. Her counselor says she's processing Sarah's death in healthier ways. And He turned Elena around in his arms so he could look at her directly. I'm happy. For the first time since the accident, I'm actually happy. Elena felt her throat tighten with emotion. Me too. Even with all the uncertainty? Especially with all the uncertainty. I spent so many years knowing exactly what my life was supposed to look like, and I was miserable. Now I wake up every morning not knowing what we'll discover about each other, or what Lily will teach us, or whether my paintings will be any good, and I feel more myself than I ever have. Marcus kissed her forehead, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over the past 3 months. Speaking of paintings, how's the portrait coming? Elena had been working on a painting of Lily, not a formal portrait, but a captured moment from a few weeks earlier when they'd been having a picnic in their backyard. Lily had been lying on her back in the grass, pointing out cloud shapes while her nebulizer hummed beside her, and something about the juxtaposition of childhood wonder and medical necessity had struck Elena as profoundly beautiful. It's happening, Elena said. Slowly, I keep starting over because I want to get it right. Can I see it? When it's finished. Elena, you've been saying that for weeks. Because it's not finished. Marcus studied her face. What are you really worried about? The question hit deeper than she'd expected. Elena walked over to the windows, looking out at the afternoon light that reminded her of her grandmother's garden, where beautiful things and useful things had grown side by side. I'm worried that I was right all those years ago, she said quietly. That I was good, but not good enough. That Richard was right when he said there was no point in pursuing something that would only ever be a hobby. And if that's true, then what am I doing? I gave up a lucrative career to paint pictures that no one will ever want to buy, to be with a man I've known for 3 months, to help raise a child who isn't mine. Marcus joined her at the window. Elena, look at me. She turned toward him reluctantly. Do you remember what you told me that first night? About painting faces when people were most themselves? Yes. What do you see when you look at my face right now? Elena studied him, really looked, the way she used to look at subjects she wanted to paint. She saw the lines around his eyes that had been carved by grief, but were now softened by laughter. She saw the way his whole expression changed when he talked about his students, or watched Lily discover something new. She saw love, yes, but also purpose and hope, and a kind of contentment she'd never witnessed in any of the successful, practical people she used to know. I see someone who's exactly where he's supposed to be, she said. That's what I see when I look at you too. Not someone who gave things up, but someone who finally chose the right things. Before Elena could respond, they heard voices in the hallway, other teachers arriving for the meeting. Marcus straightened his shirt and ran a hand through his hair. Showtime, he said. You sure you're ready? I'm sure. Marcus picked up his bag and moved toward the door, then paused. Elena? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For reminding me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing the thing that matters, even when you're scared. After Marcus left for his meeting, Elena drove home through the tree-lined streets of their new neighborhood. Home, the word still felt foreign and wonderful in her mind. The house they'd rented was nothing like her sleek Queen Anne condo, but it had something her old place had never possessed. The lived-in warmth of a space where people were building a life together. She pulled into the driveway and saw Lily in the backyard, sitting at the picnic table they'd bought at a yard sale, bent over her homework with the intense concentration she brought to everything important. How was school? Elena called as she walked through the back gate. Good. Miss Peterson said my essay about family was the best in the class. What did you write about? Lily looked up from her math worksheet. I wrote about how sometimes the best families are the ones you choose, not just the ones you're born into. Elena felt her chest tighten with emotion. That sounds like a very wise essay. Want to see it? I'd love to. Lily ran into the house and returned with a piece of paper covered in her careful 8-year-old handwriting. Elena read it slowly. Taking in Lily's description of their unconventional beginning, Elena was going to run away but decided to stay and make pancakes instead, and her matter-of-fact acceptance of their new configuration. Now we are 3 people who take care of each other. This is beautiful, Lily. Do you really think so? Or are you just saying that because you're supposed to be nice to kids? Elena sat down beside Lily at the picnic table. Can I tell you something I've learned about families? Okay. The best ones are built on truth, even when the truth is complicated or hard to explain to other people. Like, how you called off your wedding to be with us. Exactly like that. Lily nodded seriously. I'm glad you did. Dad laughs more now, and you make really good pancakes. High praise. They sat together in comfortable silence, Lily returning to her math problems, while Elena watched the late afternoon light filter through the leaves of their old oak tree. In a few weeks, Marcus would have his classroom full of students again. Elena's first art show, a small exhibition at a local coffee shop, was scheduled for next month. Lily's asthma was better controlled, her nightmares less frequent. It wasn't the life any of them had planned, but it was the life they'd chosen together. Elena? Lily said suddenly. Yeah? Can I ask you something kind of serious? Always. Lily set down her pencil and looked at Elena with an expression that was pure Marcus, thoughtful and direct, and completely present. Do you think my mom would like you? The question hit Elena like a physical blow. In all their careful conversations about Sarah, about grief and memory, and the complexity of loving someone new while honoring someone lost, no one had ever asked her this directly. I don't know, Elena said honestly. What do you think? Lily considered this with her characteristic seriousness. I think she would like that you make Dad happy. And I think she would like that you don't try to replace her or pretend she wasn't important. She was very important. She still is. I know. But I think she would also like that we're not just sad all the time anymore. Mom always wanted Dad to be happy, even when she was sick in the hospital. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. How do you know that? Because she told me. The last time I saw her, before the accident, she was worried because Dad had been working too much and forgetting to eat lunch. She made me promise to remind him to take care of himself. Lily paused. I think having you here is like having help keeping that promise. Elena reached over and pulled Lily into a hug, overwhelmed by this child's capacity for wisdom and grace. Thank you for telling me that, she whispered. You're welcome. Now can you help me with this math? Dad's good at English, but terrible at fractions. They worked on homework together until Marcus came home, full of stories about his colleagues' enthusiasm for the new semester and questions about innovative teaching methods he wanted to try. Over dinner, Elena cooking, Marcus setting the table, Lily providing commentary on everyone's performance. They felt like what they were. A family that had found each other through circumstance and chosen each other through love. That evening, after Lily had gone to bed and the dishes were washed, Elena finally led Marcus out to her studio. The garage had been transformed over the past month into something that looked like an artist's workspace. Elena had found an easel at a thrift store, set up a table for supplies, arranged the lighting to catch the best natural light during the day. Canvases in various states of completion lined the walls, practice pieces, experiments, attempts to remember how her hands worked with brush and paint. And on the easel, covered by an old sheet, was the portrait of Lily. I'm still not sure it's finished, Elena said, her hand hesitating on the sheet. Can I see it anyway? Elena pulled away the covering, and Marcus went very still. The painting showed Lily as Elena had seen her that day in the grass, not posed or formal, but caught in a moment of pure childhood wonder. Her face was turned toward the sky, one hand pointing at clouds only she could see, while the nebulizer beside her seemed to fade into background insignificance. Elena had captured something in Lily's expression that spoke to resilience and hope, and the particular beauty of a child who had learned to find joy despite difficulty. "Elena," Marcus breathed. "Is it? What do you think?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the painting with the attention he brought to poems he loved. "I think anyone who sees this would know immediately that it was painted by someone who loves the person in it. Is that enough? Love, instead of technical perfection. Elena, look at this painting. Really look at it." Elena forced herself to see her own work objectively. The brushwork was confident, the colors warm and alive. She'd captured not just Lily's physical features, but something essential about who she was: curious, brave, healing. "It's good," she said, surprised by her own assessment. "It's more than good. It's what you said you wanted to paint: someone being most themselves." Elena felt something settle in her chest, a kind of peace she hadn't known she'd been seeking. "Richard was wrong," Marcus continued, "about art being worthless if you can't make a living from it. This painting, it matters. It captures a moment in our daughter's life that we'll want to remember forever." "Our daughter?" The phrase had slipped out naturally, but hearing it spoken aloud made them both pause. "Is that okay?" Marcus asked. "I know you're not her biological mother, and I would never want to diminish Sarah's bod." Elena reached up and kissed him, cutting off his careful explanation. "It's more than okay," she said against his lips. "It's exactly right." Later that night, lying in bed with Marcus's arm around her and the sound of Lily's steady breathing coming from down the hall, Elena thought about the conversation they'd had in his car that first night. She'd asked him if he ever felt like he was living someone else's life, and he'd said, every day. Now, listening to the ordinary sounds of their shared home, she realized she finally understood what it felt like to live her own life. Not the life her parents had envisioned, or the one Richard had planned, or the one her career counselors had mapped out. Her life messy and uncertain, and absolutely right. Tomorrow, Marcus would teach his first class in almost a year. Elena would continue work on a new painting, maybe start planning for her art show. Lily would bring home new stories and homework, and probably track Mud through the kitchen, despite their best efforts. It would be ordinary and extraordinary, predictable and surprising, exactly like the life they were building together, one choice at a time. Elena closed her eyes and let herself fall asleep to the sound of her family breathing. If you enjoy this story, I want you to click the subscribe button for more stories like this. This will mean a lot for the channel. Thank you.